Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Be Your Best. My name is Josh Clark, and today we're going to talk about, will you come out stronger? Will you come out of whatever current challenge or crisis, or in the case of the current times here, a pandemic here in 2020? Will we come out of it stronger for having survived it? You know, they say that when we get a virus, if we survive it, that in most cases we come out of it stronger than when we first entered it. And so it makes me think of Kelly Clarkson's song where she says, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. And so with that analogy in mind, let's consider the current challenge that we're in. Will we allow it? We have two choices. Will we allow it to define us, or will we define the challenge? You know, throughout life, we're going to go through fires, some big and some small. But the challenge is, as we go through that fire, will we allow the heat and the pressure to transform us into a beautiful diamond? Or will we be a log on a fire and turn to ash? The choice is ours. You know, will we, like plastic, will we melt in a fire? Or plastic appears strong until it's tested in a fire? Or will we be like steel? That yes, it's affected. Yes, it's challenged. It turns bright red and it gets softer. But in the process, it can be molded into a useful tool that's even more effective than it was before. And so with that in mind, let's ask ourselves, are we controlling the things that we can control? Are we, as I like to say, are we controlling the controllables? Or are we focusing our energy, our mindset, our resources on what we can't control, what we can't change? You see, we have choices to make at this time. Will we control the controllables? What are some of the controllables in our life? Well, one is, what are we going to watch? What are we reading? What are we listening to? Because they say that quality of input determines quality of output. What we allow, we can control what we allow in our mind in most cases, but what we can't control is how that affects us. So one of the keys is, as you and I know, and it's just a reminder to myself and to each of us, one of the keys is here as we control the controllables is, what are we allowing in? What are we spending our time on? Because it's going to affect our attitude. You know, I was talking with a friend of mine who's in the midst of his crisis. It's affecting his business. But rather than focusing on what he can't control, he's been focusing in on developing a new product that might allow him to launch another business. You know, if he were to lose his first business, it would allow him to diversify his assets, diversify himself to get through the next crisis, to survive this one. So what are we focusing on? Speaking of controlling the controllables, what about our diet? I have to admit that when this pandemic first hit, and when I had to quit going into the office, I was working from home, I had been used to packing my food, and you know, there wasn't much way to deviate from that. But now I can run up to the pantry and I can snack on things, and I realize, wait a minute, if I don't control this, it's going to control me. What about fitness? At first, I was used to accountability. I was used to working out at a fitness class that was right down the road from my office. All of a sudden, I found myself busier than ever. Being in an essential business, we've been busier than ever. And so I found myself cutting out exercise. And then I realized, wait a minute, if I don't control this area of my life, it will eventually control me. I'll come out of this, having unfit, unhealthy. What about our words? Are you controlling the words that come out of your mouth? You know, as we're confined in tighter spaces and we're with family and friends and people that too often, in some cases, we've even taken for granted, and now we're confined with them. Are we watching the words that we can control? Are we loving our family? Are we focusing on our marriage? Or are we, in some cases, we may be realizing the fruit of time and maybe years of not being focused on the things that matter most to us. But it's not too late to control the controllables. What about, are we drawing closer or more distant to people? You might say, well, Josh, we're not able to be out around people. But you know what? What about doing wellness checks? What about picking up the phone to check on friends and family, and maybe people you haven't even spoken with in years, to see how are they doing during these times. Do you think you might come out even closer to some of the relationships, the people that you know? See, there is, isn't there? There is so much that we can control. And I hope this puts a smile on your face. And rather than beating us up, I hope it inspires us to take control of the rest of this period of time. Take control of not only this crisis, this challenge, but challenges that will come, fires that will spring up in our life. Control the controllables. And so now my challenge to you as we wrap this up is, I want to ask you, will you identify 3 areas that you need to control, that you need to be proactive in, instead of letting time pass, instead of letting this period of time go by? Never waste a crisis. Never waste a crisis. Whether it's learning a language, whether it's reading a new book, whether it's starting a business, will you come out stronger for controlling the things that you can? The areas that you're able to. And then finally, I want to ask you, will you take just a moment? This exercise is better to do it now than to live with the regret of having not done it. Will you write down what will happen if you take control of these 3 areas that you just wrote down? Now, what will happen if you don't? What will be the effects of not being intentional with this period of time? And then finally, will you call a friend? Call them up and ask them, hey, will you hold me accountable? Chances are they need the exact same encouragement to make sure that they come out of this period stronger than they entered. And now in closing, I want to remind you of this quote: control the controllables and leave the rest to God. And then another quote by Joshua Graham says, I survived because the fire inside of me burns stronger than the fire around me. Does the desire to be your best, to control what you can, does it burn stronger than the fire around you? I hope so. And so now let's go out there and make it a super ultra awesome, fantastic day as we control the controllables. And now, if this episode has encouraged you, will you take a moment to share it with others? And if you'd like to view any of the other 63 episodes, you can go to beacatalyst.com or subscribe to my podcast, Be Your Best with Josh Clark. God bless.